On August 16th, 2026, Hollywood lost an actress that so many of us literally watched grow up on screen. Hayden Panettiere was only 36 years old. She was a massive childhood star, a television icon, a singer, and a mother. But behind the scenes, she spent years publicly fighting some of the heaviest battles you could ever imagine. Now, her life was cut short out of nowhere, and detectives are already actively trying to piece together her final hours. Because when the paramedics rushed into that apartment, Hayden wasn't alone. Her on-again, off-again boyfriend, Brian Hickerson, was right there with his brother Zach. And look, we have to keep it real. Investigators haven't thrown accusations around or called this a murder, but we can't ignore the fact that Hayden and Brian had a notoriously brutal, documented history of domestic violence. And just a few months ago, her past with him became a massive headline all over again. So tonight, we're going to talk about what we actually know. The toxic relationship, the jail time, the terrifying abuse she survived, and exactly what happened inside that South Carolina apartment on the afternoon that she died. Hayden became famous before she even was old enough to go to middle school. She started out in commercials and soaps, and before long, she was one of the biggest young stars on earth, completely locking in her spot as Hollywood loyalty. But while she looked like she had it all from the outside, she was privately drowning. She struggled deeply with addiction, suffered from severe postpartum depression after having her daughter, and eventually had to go to rehab. Just a few months ago, in May of 2026, Hayden decided she was finally ready to tell her raw truth. She dropped a memoir called This Is Me, A Reckoning. And inside those pages, she laid everything out. The addiction, the grief, and the absolute nightmare of her relationship with Brian. Hayden and Brian started dating back in 2018, and things turned dark incredibly fast. Over the years, their relationship turned into a continuous cycle of domestic violence and arrest. In 2019, he was arrested for domestic violence, but the case got dismissed. Then in 2020, he was faced with massive felony charges for injuring a spouse or girlfriend, assault with a deadly weapon, and even trying to intimidate a witness, and ended up pleading no contest to 2 felony domestic violence counts and got thrown into county jail. He was given 4 years of probation, ordered to take mandatory abuse classes, and put under a strict protective order. In her book, Hayden described the very first time he put his hands on her. She wrote about hearing the sound of the slap before she even registered the pain, the blinding fear, and how quickly she got trapped in the cycle. She spoke out publicly because she wanted other survivors to know they weren't alone and that escaping was possible. Hayden admitted how incredibly hard it was to stay away. It became this toxic loop. They would break up, reconnect, separate, and then he would wind up right back in her life. Literally, right after he got out of jail in 2021, paparazzi spotted them together again. A year later, they were photographed right in the middle of a chaotic, massive brawl outside a hotel in LA. But according to Hayden, she genuinely believed he was a changed man. She talked about forgiveness, and she believed in him, and she let him straight back into her world. That brings us to August 2026. Hayden had traveled down to Greenville, South Carolina, and she was staying with Brian Hickerson at the Judson Mill Lofts. On Sunday afternoon, August 16th, everything shattered. At around 1:51 p.m., a frantic emergency call came out to 911. Dispatchers reported an unresponsive female in full cardiac arrest, and the initial dispatch audio mentioned a suspected overdose. Paramedics rushed into the apartment, started performing CPR, and even administered Narcan to try to bring her back. But it was too late. At 2:32 p.m., Hayden was officially pronounced dead at just 36 years old. According to the official police incident reports, Brian and his brother Zach were the ones who found her unresponsive in the apartment and called 911. While officers were securing the scene, Brian actually handed them a bag full of medications that Hayden had reportedly been taking. Now, the police haven't released the names of those medications as of today. Toxicologists are running deep lab tests right now to find out what was in her system, and that can take weeks. It is completely natural for people to feel suspicious. Even Hayden's estranged mom publicly blasted Brian right after the news broke, making it clear the family had been desperately trying to distance her from him. Right now, Brian has not been charged, and the autopsy found no trauma. What did Brian tell the detectives? And what actually were those medications? And why was Narcan needed on the scene? Was Hayden dealing with a tragic relapse, or did she suffer a completely unexpected sudden medical event? Right now, we simply do not know, but she was so much more than a breaking news alert. We don't get to decide what happened here on Crimetopia. We follow the hard physical evidence wherever it leads. And if the final toxicology report results rewrite the timeline, we will follow them right to the truth. I'm Lisa. This is Crimetopia. Stay safe, stay aware, and take care.